In most jazz practice routines, I think there are two things that don't get the focus that they deserve. This is a problem that I want to discuss in this video because I think if you start thinking about it, if you're thinking about what you're trying to learn, how you want to use it, and putting those things together when you're practicing, then you're going to get there a lot faster. So you don't want to just practice some technique and then play some songs. My name is Larsen, learn jazz, make music. Practicing towards being more flexible with the things that we're trying to learn is something that most of us don't pay enough attention to. And a lot of the time that's because we just have some exercises that we do, and then you can just play those exercises and you get better at them through time and you don't have to think about it. And maybe that's a little bit the problem. You want to practice stuff where you actually have to think while you're playing or while you're practicing. Here's how you notice this and start working on improving it. Let's say that you're working on using the arpeggios from the third of the chord, and then that you're using the bridge of I Remember April as a chord progression to do this on. Now I'm taking that one because it's a fairly simple chord progression. It's just a bunch of 2-5-1s. So even if you don't know the song, then you can still follow along with what's going on. It's pretty easy to get used to. So just to cover that, the chords are first C minor 7 to F7 to B flat major 7, so a 2-5-1 in the key of B flat major. Then that's repeated. Then we get a 2-5-1 in the key of G major. And then a 2-5-1 in the key of E major. So for those chords, we need to find the arpeggio from the third of each one. So if we take first C minor 7, so the third is E flat, and the arpeggio that you have there is an E flat major 7. So for the F7, the third is A, the arpeggio is A half diminished. And then we get a B flat major 7, the third is a D, and the arpeggio is a D minor 7. Then that's repeated, so C minor 7, F7, and B flat major 7. Then we get the 2-5-1 in G major. So A minor, the third is C, the arpeggio is C major 7. For the D7, the arpeggio is from the third F sharp, and that's an F sharp half diminished. And then the G major 7, the third is B, the arpeggio is B minor 7. And then we get the final 2-5, so F sharp minor 7, the third is A major 7. For the B7, the third is D sharp, and the arpeggio is D sharp half diminished. And then we get the E major 7, the third is G sharp, and the arpeggio is G sharp minor 7. The first exercise will probably just be to play these arpeggios through the song in time. That will be something like this. Of course, you're doing most things right when you're practicing like this because you're working on playing those arpeggios, you're playing them in the song, and you're applying them to a chord progression so you can hear how they sound in context. But the problem is a little bit that if you play them like this and you only play them like this, then chances are you can't really make too many melodies with it because the only thing you can do is it's just one block of notes, it's a row of notes, and you don't really work on playing them in different patterns or making different melodies with it. And of course, when you improvise with it, then you kind of want to be able to do that. So a great way to check that is just to start on another note when you're playing the arpeggio. For instance, you can start on the third of the arpeggio and then take that through the form. So that means that for the first arpeggio, you're starting on the G and then playing the rest of the arpeggio like this. And taking that through the form would sound something like this. So that means that when you're working on something like using the arpeggio from the third of a chord, then you don't only want to play the arpeggios in that one way and be able to do that without having to think about it. You kind of want to keep thinking about it, and then you want to work on being flexible so that you actually have some material that you can use and that you have some freedom when you start improvising. Another thing that can be really useful is, of course, just to play the arpeggios descending. So this is really just about making variations of the exercises and not get stuck in one way of playing it and then kind of making that automatic, because really what you want to develop is a part of your vocabulary that you can make music with, and that you can hear the different notes and how they work together and how you can make melodies with them. So the general advice, if you're working on being more flexible with the things that you're practicing, is to slow things down a bit, keep thinking about what you're doing, being aware of what you're doing, not just moving your fingers, and then also trying to really open up how you practice. So make a lot of variations, find different ways of playing. If you're playing an arpeggio like this, play different patterns, play different melodies with it, and just keep it slow. You're working on being flexible, you're not working on being fast, because that's going to be more efficient when you start to improvise with this arpeggio. So actually, this is something that I also heard Kurt Rosenwinkel talk about in a masterclass, where the point of an exercise is, of course, to move your fingers and practice playing the instrument, but also to keep your brain working, to build your overview and keep trying to find new ways of making music and new sounds, and that way activating everything. And I think you want to kind of have that in there when you're trying to plan your practice and keep coming up with new things. Let's say that you can play the arpeggios through the chord progression, similar to the exercise that I went over in the previous section of this video. Does that immediately mean that you can also use them to make great solo lines in your improvisations? When I say it like this, you can probably hear that I don't think so. And of course, I think it's also unreasonable to think that if you do a few weeks of technical exercises, then you're gonna come out as Michael Brecker on the other side. What needs to happen? I think the thing that you need to work on is really using this material, because one thing is being able to play it, but you also still need to be able to make music with it, and you need to combine it with all the other things that you already play, and in that way get it to sit right in your lines and be free to make music with it. So I would suggest you work on it sort of in a stepwise process like this. First, you just take the basic material and then you're trying to use that to improvise some lines. So I would actually suggest you do this rubato, but just so you have an idea about how that might sound, here are two examples that are in time. Here I'm just using the arpeggios. It's all just the basic material that you practiced in the exercise, but I'm going from just playing the arpeggio to really trying to make a melody with it. The next step would be to try and connect this to all the other things you're playing. So I think the first things you want to work with there would be the scale and a few chromatic passing notes, and that could be something like these two phrases. So what you're doing here is that you're working on making melodies with it, and because you're working rubato first, then you can really sit down and get it to sit right together, make melodies that really work, and you're not under pressure from playing in time. And this is something that you can then take to first slower tempos, and in that way just gradually integrate into your playing. When you're working on material in this way and you're trying to get it into your playing, into your ears and into your fingers, then I think it's also clear that if you try to do this in all positions at the same time, that's going to be very difficult to really get to work. That's going to take a really long time. And since a lot of this is about hearing melodies and getting it into your system and into the way that you think, it's also going to work a lot better to first focus on one position and then not get lost in all the other positions, and then you can later start moving it around. And actually this already works with the chord progression, because in this case you can start working with the C-7, F7, develop material there, and then start experimenting with how you can move the same or make variations of the same material that will work for the two other keys, because essentially that's just the same progression in another position. And I think to me this is really about just keeping in mind what the goal is with the exercise, because in this case the goal is to practice these arpeggios and be able to make music with them. And you don't want to drown yourself with a lot of fingerings and a lot of extra options with that. You want to stay focused on being able to come up with some solid music with some new material. I think it's very important and also very useful to evaluate how you practice. So look at what you're working on, what your goals are, if they're practical. Try to set goals that you can actually achieve, or make it into smaller goals that you can get closer to. Because if you're only looking far into the future, then it gets difficult to stay motivated. And it's also really difficult to judge if you're really getting there. So making the goals something that you can reach in a few weeks, or at least something that you can look forward to reaching, that is going to help you really a lot. If you want to check out a video where I'm discussing some of the very common mistakes that people make when they start studying jazz, then check out this video, because that's gonna help you develop your playing a lot faster.